Welcome to everybody. It's good to see everybody here this morning. And we want to make this nice and open and friendly and easy for you to ask questions too. So again, my name is Leigh Ann Hyatt, registered nurse, bachelor's degree, and Alzheimer's is something I've been interested in for a long, long time and have worked in for a good while too. Alzheimer's and other kinds of dementia. I'm a community educator for the Alzheimer's Association, which is a volunteer position, but have done a lot of professional things with Alzheimer's and dementia too. So what we'll do as far as we go through this, there will be places where I'll stop and ask if we've got any questions. How does that go for you all? And then of course at the end, anything that we didn't catch up on, we can do then. And as everybody you've all signed in. I know Laura mentioned that. What about, do you all have a set of the handouts? There are two different pieces. Okay, good. And those, of course, you'll take away with you at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, I'm going to turn one light off so we can...
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that your Alzheimer's Association is out of Nashville. And so if anybody needs to know their address and phone numbers, your helpline will be on some of the presentation material that you take. It's a 24/7 helpline. So this means if you're a person who's caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's, dementia, and you run into a problem and it's 3 a.m. and you're in a mess trying to figure out what to do, you can always go to that line 24/7, and there is a master degreed social worker that will help you with whatever this problem is. So that's good to know. That's good insurance there. So this is designed this morning. We're going to be doing the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. I know you see all 3 up there. Those other presentations are ones that we can do at any point if it's something you're interested in following up on, and you'll be letting Laura know. But 10 warning signs is where we're going to start this morning. And it's designed for those that want to know more, obviously, about the warning signs. So before we even start, how many of you all are actually concerned about a person that you know that may have Alzheimer's dementia? Just a show of hands. Quite a few of you, yeah. So this is a good one for you to be taking a look at. So you have people in your lives that you're concerned about. Okay, well, good. Glad to know that. Okay, this morning we are going to be exploring, obviously, the 10 warning signs of the Alzheimer's Association. And if you'll click in the middle there, in the middle of the picture, these are going to be our learning objectives. So describing typical age-related memory, what's typical and normal, and thinking or behavior changes, and then recognizing the common warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, which are different than the normal aging. And that's always good to know right there. We're going to discuss the tips for approaching someone about memory concerns, and that's one of the handouts that you've got and will take away with you. Explain the importance of early detection and benefits of diagnosis. Identify possible tests and assessments for the diagnostic process, and name the resources available through your Alzheimer's Association. So again, just a call away in Nashville with a lot of different supportive services. If you're computer savvy and you have not gone to the Alzheimer's Association website, then that is a great place to start. There is all kinds of information for caregivers, and just resources are abundant. One of the things that's on there is all of the support groups for caregivers that are going on. There's only one in Rutherford County that is part of the Alzheimer's Association's support groups, and that's one that I lead here in Murfreesboro. So if that's the case, then we'll do some follow-up information maybe on letting me know that you'd like to come to one of the groups. I like to top them at 9. So if we've got one that's full, we'll start another one. Okay? I want you to meet the Garcias, and this is Mary, and she is a 73-year-old widow. She lives alone, retired teacher. She's always meticulously cared for her home. Her daughter Lydia has recently been noticing laundry pileup, junk mail, and old newspapers lying around the house. So there's been a change. Click on Lydia's face over to the far left. Lydia is the oldest of Mary's 2 daughters, and she lives just a few miles away. She visits her mother frequently. So we've got one close by. Now click over here. Okay, that's Patricia, and Patricia lives in another state. She works long hours. She isn't able to visit her mother as often as she'd like. She communicates with Mary and Lydia frequently via phone and text messaging. Okay, pretty common things to do now. So let's go to next. Worried about mom? She keeps losing things and the house is a mess. Probably normal to get a little forgetful with age. It's so unlike her. Should we worry? Let's reach out to our old neighbor, Dr. Salloway. So let's hear from Dr. Salloway. He is a real doctor. He's not fictitious like our family is up here. And he's an expert on Alzheimer's, of course. So in the little triangle.
As we get older, cognitive problems become more noticeable for almost everybody. And it can vary from person to person. Typically with age, people have trouble coming up with the word they want right when they want it. They have trouble remembering names and they don't think quite as quickly. What's more concerning, or what might be the beginning of a memory problem, is people have a lot of trouble coming up with words or names, and it's happening more frequently, and the words or names don't necessarily come to them later. And then they start misplacing things, but not just once in a while, because we all misplace things, but more often. And it begins to interfere day to day. That should be a warning sign for people that this might be the beginning of a memory problem.
All righty, we're going to hear from experts. So Laura, if you would go to what is dementia up in the left-hand corner there.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual, but there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
And actually, Alzheimer's is definitely prevalent, much higher percentage with Alzheimer's. With vascular dementia, often it's following a stroke. So that may be a cause there too. There are actually over 100 kinds of dementia, just to make things really confusing. Okay, Laura, what is Alzheimer's disease would be the next.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alois Alzheimer's described specific changes in the brain, what we call the formation of plaques and tangles. Now, Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and is thought to impact memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has 3 main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. The cerebrum fills up most of your skull. It is part of the brain most involved in remembering, problem solving, thinking, and even feelings. There are about 100 billion nerve cells or neurons throughout the brain that transmit messages in order for us to create memories, feelings, and thoughts. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to the brain tissue loss, or what we call shrinkage, and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as memory loss, problems with thinking, planning, behavioral issues, and even at the end stages, problems with swallowing.
Okay, so why is it important to know the signs?
It's important to know what the warning signs of Alzheimer's are and to be on the lookout. We know that we change over time, and the warning signs of Alzheimer's can be warning signs of a number of things, but when you see those in yourself or in someone you care about, it's important to check it out, to consult with a doctor, to find out what you're dealing with.
There are a number of conditions that can cause dementia symptoms. Might be medication side effects. That's possible, and you're shaking your head. Other things, and one or two of them are reversible, so that's another reason why it's just really important to go ahead and see a physician and go through the process of being diagnosed to see if you can rule out some of these other things or maybe fix them. Okay, so Laura, if you would go to number 1, memory loss that disrupts daily life. What are the possible signs? Forgetting recently learned information, forgetting important dates or events, asking the same questions over and over again. This is one of the hallmarks, I think, that we all know. Increasingly relying on memory aids, lots of reminder notes all over the place, or family members for tasks, for formally managed with ease. So suddenly they're becoming less independent. So, but what's typical age-related change? Sometimes forgetting names or appointments, but remembering them later. So there's a distinction right there. Okay, let's go to next sign, down here at the bottom. All right. Challenges in planning or solving problems. Some people experience changes, their ability to develop and follow a plan or work with numbers. Suddenly the checkbook is just all out of whack. Trouble following a familiar recipe, that may be a sign too. Or keeping track of monthly bills. Bills are suddenly not being paid, and a son or daughter figures this out. Difficulty concentrating and taking much longer to complete tasks. So what's typical age-related? Making occasional errors when we're managing our finances or household bills. And what we're looking for there is a change, because maybe it's somebody who's always had trouble, but if there is a change, somebody who's kept it together. So down here, what was the sign for John?
I was probably spending 4 to 5 times more time preparing for something than I did, say, 5 or 10 years ago, because of I would lose my thought, I'd lose my focus, I'd get anxious, I wouldn't get to sleep. I was thinking of this, I was in my sleep, I was thinking about what I was anxious about, which was I was trying to remember, which was I was trying to prepare, which I was trying to do. So it was really a vicious circle of, so I was able to control it a lot, so that people wouldn't see things, and there weren't things to be seen. It's what was disturbing me was what effort I had to put into to do the things I used to do more easily.
All right, number 3 is difficulty completing familiar tasks, which differs a little bit from 2. But people with dementia might have difficulty completing their daily tasks, such as driving. Here's when driving becomes a problem. A real big problem for families is when to pull those keys and when to disable that truck. So driving to a familiar location, they're lost, and they may end up an hour and a half or 2 hours later somewhere and not know how to get home, and the family member gets that phone call. Organizing a grocery list, just not able to do that anymore, and remembering the rules of a favorite game. So typically age-related, occasionally needing help to use the settings on a microwave or to record a television show. And now that we have maps, that's always helpful. Next sign. Let's do hear from the.
Some people have difficulty with math or with reading in a way that's unusual to them. And once again, this is a change in that person. So for example, we all know somebody who was never able to balance their checkbook, right? So that wouldn't be a warning sign for them. But if somebody who always balanced their checkbook to the penny suddenly was paying bills, the same bill over and over, and not able to balance their finances, well, that would be a sign for them.
Let's see, next sign. Confusion with time or place. People living with Alzheimer's, other dementias, can lose track of dates. Of course, we can too, right? Seasons and passage of time. Now, seasons is a little bit more difficult here. And so they may have trouble understanding something if it's not happening immediately. Sometimes TV shows are very confusing to people that have Alzheimer's and dementia beginning too. They begin to lose track with the story. So people forget where they are or how they got here. And what's typical age-related behavior? Just getting confused about the day of the week, but figuring it out later. Hey, Charlie, what's the date today? What'd you say? And we're fine, and we keep going. All right, number 5 is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. So for some people with vision problems, the vision problems can be a sign of dementia, and that may lead to difficulty with balance, trouble reading, problems judging distance, determining color, contrast, and of course that's going to cause issues with driving too. Red stop signs, red light, green light, yellow light. But what's typical age-related? Vision changes related to cataracts. That's common, and that's something that's fixable. So we're going to hear from the expert on that one.
Alzheimer's disease is not just a disease of memory. It can affect other things too. It can affect the way that we perceive what we see. So sometimes somebody in the early stages of Alzheimer's might go to the eye doctor because they're having trouble seeing, and in fact, their vision is just fine, but the way they're perceiving what they're seeing may be difficult.
And that's an interesting thought, isn't it? Yeah. All right, next is number 6. Number 6, new problems with words in speaking or writing. New problems. So what are the signs of dementia? Trouble following or joining a conversation. Stopping in the middle of a conversation and have no idea how to continue. And that happens occasionally. You're like, where was I? But this is happening frequently. No idea how to continue. They repeat themselves. They struggle with vocabulary, can't quite find that word. And they have trouble naming a familiar object or use the wrong name. And you might hear somebody say, could you hand me that, that thing that's over, that thing on the coffee table, referring to a remote. Let's see what happened with Phil down here.
The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with are words, which I've dealt with words my entire life, you know, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
And that was an example. He was having a little struggle there. Okay, next is number 7. And that is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace the steps. With Alzheimer's, with dementia, putting things in unusual places. You might find a shoe in the microwave. Well, some strange stories. There are some strange stories from family members about where they're finding things. lose things and they're unable to go back over the steps. Now, you know, if you or I lose something, we go, okay, now wait a minute. I walked in the house and I put those keys down on the table, didn't I? That's where, let me go back and look, you know. The normal place, right by the door, they weren't there, but you retrace the steps and you finally find those things. But they're not able to do that, and it occurs more frequently over time. So let's hear from that expert.
So some people wonder if, you know, if they lose their keys or their glasses or their purse, is that a sign of Alzheimer's? And one thing that I would say about that is, for most of us, we might misplace something, but then if we retrace our steps, we can usually find it. We can usually remember. For a person with Alzheimer's, sometimes they're not able to retrace their steps. Sometimes that memory is just gone. And so when they do find their keys next to the phone because they got interrupted by a phone call when they were coming in, they set their keys down in an unusual space, so there they are next to the phone. If that happened to you or me, we'd probably remember, oh yeah, the phone was ringing when I came in the door. I put down my keys. The person with Alzheimer's might not remember. They might wonder who's moving their keys around because they never put their keys by the phone. So that's just a little bit of a difference in some of the dynamics with losing things in Alzheimer's.
That's another thing with dementia. Often they try to cover, particularly in the early times. They're kind of embarrassed often about having these memory changes, and so they'll cover and they'll say, well, obviously my husband put it somewhere. Some of us do that anyway, a little bit, but this is pretty frequent. Okay, number 8, and that is decreased or poor judgment. Judgment skills are now changing here. So with Alzheimer's dementia, they may use poor judgment when dealing with money. $100 tip for the waitress. Nice for the waitress, but not on purpose, you know, here. Not with somebody that cannot afford to leave $100 tip for the waitress. Paying less attention to grooming or keeping themselves clean. Huge, notice that, huge difference there. Especially when somebody was always meticulous about how they looked or how they kept their house. So what's typical age-related? We make a bad decision or a mistake. Like we're not remembering to change the oil in the car, or we let the gas tank get a little too low and suddenly it's a crisis. But let's find out what happened for Teresa.
The way I kept my house, I wouldn't say I was OCD, but pretty close to it. And all of a sudden, everything was okay with me. It's like, oh, it's a pile, I'm tired. So my dining room table usually looked like it was someone's office, because I always would say I would do it tomorrow. And then my bedroom, as far as clothing, I would just put it in a corner, put it in a chair. And all of this is just, I wouldn't say it looked like I was a pet wreck, but really I was, because I never threw anything away. I always would say, I'll get to it, but I never did get to it. So just the way of my standard of living, it was actually decreasing.
Sounds like a teenager, doesn't it? All right, now we will go to number 9, withdrawal from work or social activities. And why do you think they're doing that? They're embarrassed by their memory changes. They know they can't do it anymore. And so particularly in social situations, they will withdraw. And suddenly someone who's very gregarious will be very quiet in social situations, and they may not be following the conversations. Withdrawing from hobbies, social activities, other engagements. Trouble keeping up with their favorite team or whatever their activities are. Laverne quit knitting. That would be a sign if Laverne quit knitting. What is typical age-related change? Sometimes being disinterested in family or social engagements. You don't really want to go, but distinct differences here.
One of the most common changes, and early on, is the person's comfort zone shrinks a little bit, and then that gets worse throughout the course of the illness. So they're less comfortable going out, they're less motivated to do things than they were in the past. So there's some change in day-to-day functioning that way. I think people also lose confidence in their cognitive abilities because they may not recognize someone or know their name or find the right word, and they'll feel awkward, and they don't want people to notice that, so they feel more comfortable at home or in situations with family where they're very, very comfortable with that wouldn't concern them. So people tend to withdraw a little bit and be less outgoing. That's can be one of the early signs of Alzheimer's.
Now the next sign is our number 10 here, changes in mood and personality. So becoming confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious. And this is maybe, you took my purse that Laura was talking about. Getting easily upset at home with friends or when out of their comfort zone. So easily changing, you'll see a change. And that's the key word to think about all these things is this a change from the normal person that I know? So typically, age-related change is we develop very specific ways of doing things and we become irritable when a routine is disrupted, right? We get in our own way of doing things. So let's hear from the expert on this one.
Another early sign of Alzheimer's or dementia is subtle changes in behavior. So all of a sudden, the family may notice the person is more easily irritated or more impatient or a little moody or have a shorter fuse or more anxious. Now, there's lots of things that can cause that, but often that can be an early symptom of Alzheimer's or go along with the early symptoms of memory loss.
Okay, we're going to check in with the Garcias again here. Here they are. So interpreting the signs and deciding the next steps. So next again. Do you look at the warning signs info I sent? I did, but still don't know. Mom's showing a couple of signs, but not all of them. How do we know if she's serious enough to see a doctor? Let's check with good old Dr. Salloway. So let's hear what and I just bet you he's really not a neighbor.
Memory is not all or none, especially when there are early symptoms or signs. So on a good day, people might function very well and not really no one notices there's a memory problem. But on other days, especially if they're tired, then things become more noticeable. So memory is variable. It's not all or none. And then there are different type of symptoms that develop for each person. So some people may have trouble with language, may have trouble with organizing themselves, may have trouble navigating while driving, and other people don't have the same symptoms. So you don't have to have every symptom of Alzheimer's to be concerned. And I think the most important thing is determining what has changed from that person's normal level of functioning. And usually people have a pretty keen sense of, what they can normally do well. And then when either they or the family notice that there has been some change from that usual pattern of functioning, that should be a warning sign to people. But they don't have to check off all the boxes.
Well, here's our recap. So we've got 10 signs, and individuals may experience one or multiple signs, thank you very much, in varying degrees, but they don't have to experience them all for there to be concern. So it's not a checklist. If you notice any of these signs in yourself, and there's in yourself or someone else, it's important to see a doctor. And I know that we've got someone in our family who started noticing it in herself, and she brought it up, and she's early. She's only in her late 60s, but she brought it up to the family member who went ahead and went with her to the doctor to get this checked up, and sure enough, she has early Alzheimer's. Now, in some cases, it's just pure observation of what the family is seeing and what you're seeing, and it's very important. They want that the family talk about the changes they're seeing, but they're doing all kinds of brain scans now. and they're doing PET scans and MRIs. Now, what the MRI can show is shrinkage of the brain. And as the brain cells begin to die, the entire brain begins to shrink. And they can pick that up in MRI for sure. So they're calling them biomarkers, different subtle tests that they can do, and they're looking so hard to find an easy blood test or something like that, you know, where they can pick this up real quickly and real easily and less invasively. But we're going to see in a few minutes some of the things that we can do next. The importance of early detection, and we'll be answering some of your questions here too. And let's go to next. Friends and family are often the first to notice the changes. So let's hear from the expert up in the left-hand corner.
You know, it's a very interesting phenomena that people who have memory problems are often less aware of it than family members or their friends who know them well. One of the reasons for that is our ability to monitor ourselves, which is an important part of brain function, decreases when we start having memory problems. Not in everybody, but commonly, and more than half the people with memory problems. And so the person is just not keeping track of the trouble they're having day to day. But the family members are, you know, paying attention. If they're paying attention, they see, boy, this is starting to happen a lot, and the person's not aware of it. So the family's more aware, and they may talk to their loved one about it, and they say, you know, I've noticed you've been repeating yourself. And they say, I'm not repeating myself. And that could either be due to the fact that they're not aware of it, or they may not want to acknowledge it.
So let's see, what did Mary herself notice?
I was all adamant about what was happening to Daryl. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. And this wasn't the person that I know. This wasn't the person. Daryl was my husband was very, he always had to be building or designing or working with his hands. And it was getting to the point where he wasn't, and he was becoming very frustrated when he was forgetting to do things or go places.
So what should you do if you notice changes in someone? This is your next handout, so you'll be taking this one with you. 10 steps to approach memory changes. First, you're going to assess the situation. So click on number 1 there, if you would. What changes in memory, thinking, or behavior do you see? So that would be the first thing that you are going to be doing, is looking at that. What kind of changes? What kind of behaviors? What's causing you concern there? So the next step. So what else is going on? What other signs are you seeing? Is there something going on in their life? Is it diabetes? Is there a change in medication? So what other kinds of things are going on? And then the next step. Okay, number 3, learn about the signs and benefits of early diagnosis, which is why you're here today, right? So that's a good thing for us to be doing here. So do we notice any of these signs in the person you're concerned about that we're talking about today? So our next step. Has anyone else noticed these changes? So this is the time when you check with other family members, like the 2 daughters are doing here, texting back and forth. Have you noticed those changes in mom? You know, checking with the next door neighbor. Have you noticed changes in mom? So that can help confirm what you're seeing. Have a conversation. So let's go ahead and look at number 5 here. Who should we have the conversation? Who should have the discussion? Because we're talking now about taking this to the person that we've noticed the problems in. So it gets delicate. So who in the family would be the best person to go and talk to mom or your sister about? And it's not a good idea to take 2 or 3 or 4 people. You're not confronting an alcoholic. You don't want to intimidate them. You don't want to, and it's not a family intervention like that. It's one person who goes very gently and very diplomatically. And so you elect that person, who that person would be, to just talk to them about it one-on-one, and making sure that there's no judgment in it, because that will certainly, you'll get a lot of resistance if there's judgment. So our next step is number 6. What is the best time and place to have the conversation? This is a planned event. You're going to want to make sure that their distractions are down to a minimum when the person is feeling the best. And most people with dementia and Alzheimer's symptoms feel better during the morning hours. And as they move towards the afternoon and evening, get a lot hazier. So mid-morning is probably a good time to do this. And where this person would be the most comfortable, their own home or your home, or where that might be. What will you say? Now that's a good one, right? What will you say? Well, you can start out with things like, I've noticed changes in you, Mom, and I'm concerned. Have you noticed any changes? Are you worried at all about having some memory problems? How have you been feeling lately? You haven't seemed like yourself, Mom. I noticed that you've been losing a lot of things, Mom. I noticed that you, honey, have been asking me for an awful lot of directions when you're driving the car. That's worried me. Is there anything else that you've noticed that's happened? Those are some of the script things. It doesn't hurt to go ahead and write yourself a script out of the things that you're going to say, just to make sure that that you're going to be getting this right. And then the next step will be offering to go with the person to the doctor, not sending them alone. The doctor's going to, even in this time of COVID, it's probably going to be really important that the support person also be there to be able to explain what changes that support person is seeing with the person who's having the changes. There are lots of things that could be causing this. That's another thing that you can say. Honey, there are a lot of things that could be causing these problems. Could be change in your medicines. So let's see if the doctor that can help us both figure out what is going on here. And the sooner that we find out what these problems are, the sooner we can address it. So I think it would give us both peace of mind if we went together. Those are the kinds of things to say. Number 9, if needed, have multiple conversations. The first conversation may not go so well, and you'll just have to back off a little bit and then try again at a later time. And maybe a second person in the family this time would come in and have a discussion with them, one-on-one again. So that's not a surprise. It often doesn't go well. Reach out for support. Now, where do we reach out for support? That's the question. And so many persons with caregivers, and especially with early diagnosis, are just totally traumatized by this. We don't know what to do. I'm dealing with someone right now. I had phone calls this morning, and we're in a crisis. We don't know what to do. Mom's just backed her truck into a corner on the farm and into a ditch, and we're having to put the truck. We don't know what to do. So what do? We turn to the Alzheimer's Association for information and support, and it is a very, very valuable resource. How many people are computer savvy enough to be able to go to that website and roam around? And if you are not, then finding someone younger, usually like a teenager, someone younger that can help us do that. It's very valuable. There are all kinds of course, books and pamphlets that can support you too. There are a million really wonderful books that caregivers have written about their journey through Alzheimer's and dementia, even very practical, down to the point of, how do I give this big guy a bath when he is refusing to have a bath and hasn't had one for 2 weeks? So some very practical information as things go on. Now, support groups are important too. So Alzheimer's has support groups. There's Alzheimer's Tennessee also. That's another good source of information, but I would first start with the Alzheimer's Association and go through whatever they've got. Call them on the 24/7 support line. Get the help. This is not something you can do alone. And if you do try to do it alone, your health deteriorates and you end up 19% of the time dying before the person who you are taking care of. That's how bad the stress is on the caregivers. So let's turn to the next step. Seeing the doctor, and next step after that, so most people address their concerns about memory with their primary care. That's usually where they start, the primary care physician. But in some cases, that primary care physician will refer them to the specialist for further evaluation, and that's really not a bad idea. Neurologists, psychiatrists, geriatricians, but neuropsychologists, that's a great idea. You'll find some of these in Murfreesboro. There certainly are neurologists, but not all neurologists specialize in Alzheimer's. So you'll have to make that, when you make that call, say, do you specialize in Alzheimer's? Because some specialize in other neurological diseases, but not necessarily Alzheimer's. So making that appointment with someone here or in Nashville, now that we know the signs to look for and we know how to approach the conversation, what are the benefits of early detection? And that's one of the things that our Dr. Drew discusses again. But some of the importance of early detection is paying attention to changes that you notice in people, especially regarding memory, thinking, or behavior. It's important for early detection.
There are a number of benefits in early detection of Alzheimer's. For one thing, a person is able to have a voice in what happens next. They can make plans. They can live life more on their own terms. They can also make plans for the future, financial plans, care plans. They can let people know what they want, which can be a real gift later on. It also allows time for families to make plans and to make decisions about who can do what and figure out care and those kinds of issues. Also, the treatments that are available for Alzheimer's don't cure Alzheimer's. They don't slow down the disease, but they do help with symptoms. And it seems as though they tend to work better the earlier a person is able to use those. So that can help too. Some people are interested in clinical trials. Clinical trials allow people to have access to treatments that aren't available yet. And for some people, that can be a really important thing to pursue.
So the importance of early detection, here's a recap. Paying attention to any changes in memory, thinking, or behavior that you notice. If you see changes that are unusual, take action by having that conversation. Discussing these types of concerns can be difficult. It's sensitive, it's delicate. So using your 10 steps can help you be a guide. There are a number of benefits to that early detection, and that's the opportunity to plan for the future. And she brought that up. When a person is still able to plan their own, sign all their own advance directives, their living wills, take a look at their legal wills, the powers of attorney, medical power of attorney. That's the time to get that done during early diagnosis. Later, it'll be too late because they will not be of sound mind to be able to sign those things. So it's really important for the family. Plus, you want to be able to do for them what they want for themselves. You know, you'll have family members that will say, whatever you do, don't you put me in one of those homes. And sometimes you have to pretend like you never heard that statement because it becomes necessary. And those homes are not what that person remembers when they were a child. They're quite different now. Dementia care is so totally different and so much better. But as much as possible, being able to honor their wishes is certainly important. Alrighty, and that clinical studies, that's important too. And they're also looking for people that do not have any signs of dementia right now for the control groups. So if that's something you're interested in doing, I'm sure the Alzheimer's Association would be happy to hear from you and get you plugged in. This is seeking a diagnosis. We'll kind of address a little bit what you're talking about. Now, we're not supposed to hear him, so it's okay. There is currently no way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. What do you think, true or false? False. Okay, pick false. There are a number of assessments and tests that make it possible for healthcare professionals to diagnose it with a high degree of certainty. So that's the way they phrase it. Okay, next. So these assessments, now here's Mary, she's 73. They'll want a medical history. For her, they're going to do a physical exam. For some people, they screen for depression. There you go. And they may interview a close companion if someone lives with them. The tests might be laboratory tests, mental cognitive status tests. Now, these can be done, some primary care doctors will do this. A lot of neurologists, a lot of neuropsychologists will do this. Actual physical tests, written tests. And then there's brain imaging, which are the PET scans, the MRIs, those kinds of things. Okay, next. Appointments have been going well. Mom's handling them okay. Think it's really dementia? Guess we won't know till we get a diagnosis, but let's ask good old Dr. Salloway if it could possibly be anything else.
Someone could have high blood pressure that's out of control, or they might have a thyroid condition that's not regulated, or diabetes that's not right, or on a medication that actually can cause memory loss. Drinking too much alcohol can make memory worse. So there are a lot of factors that go into cognitive difficulty with aging, that some of them can be remedied. And so we want to do everything we can to improve cognitive ability and quality of life.
So the recap, it can vary from person to person as far as the diagnostic experience. Something other than Alzheimer's could be causing the symptoms. He mentioned alcohol, and there's a particular alcohol dementia syndrome that if the person stops drinking for the rest of their life and they're treated with a lot of B vitamins that have been depleted from the drinking alcohol, it can be completely reversed, or at least partially reversed. So that's something important to know. Stigma and misconceptions, there's so many. Believing that nothing can be done. There are things that can be done. So we can prevent, some of those things can prevent people from seeking the diagnosis. They go, well, you know, she's confused, she's probably got that old-timer's disease, and there's nothing that can be done, so we're just gonna have to move her into a nursing home, and that's that. That's the stigma and misconceptions. Okay, next. Now we're back to Mary. So what's next when the diagnosis is Alzheimer's? I called, but got your voicemail. How'd it go? Call you later when I get home, but the diagnosis is early stage Alzheimer's. Oh no, what do we do now? Doc said the Alzheimer's Association offers free resources, even some help some people live well with the disease. We'll call soon, but left the office with some hope. And that's the important point. There is hope here. Okay, now here we are, I do believe, at a support group. The mission leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia, accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. Our vision is a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementia. And there's the phone number right there, and it should be on some of your paperwork there for Alzheimer's organization. If not, you want me to read that out if you want to write it down? You got it? Okay, it's on there. Here's your 24/7 helpline, and there it is, and I know that's, but click on the phone if you would there, Laura.
I've had a couple of phone calls that I've been able to make in to the call center when I've had a couple of quick questions that I wanted to ask. You know, there's been a couple of nights, 2 o'clock in the morning, you have questions, you have anxieties, and I was struggling dealing with them, and it's amazing. It was one of the best things I ever did, was keeping the call center on my favorites now. Just to know that there's somebody you can call who is aware of what you're going through.
When I went to the Alzheimer's Association website, which is alz.org, there I was trying to find out more about what was Alzheimer's, what really is this disease, what is younger onset Alzheimer's, what is dementia, is there a cure, how long has this been around, how many people are affected by this, where can I go for resources, where can I go for help, what do I do with this? How can I handle this? Is there more people like me out there? Is there someone that I can talk to if I need to? And there I found a support line that's 24 hours a day. And there I found where I can go for workshops, where I can go and read things and postings that people have done, where I can find out what events is happening in the Alzheimer's Association, where I can see how it's affecting people around the globe.
Since I've been diagnosed with dementia, the one place that I know I can go to for assistance and help and support is to the Alzheimer's Association. There are people there that I know by name that I can contact if I'm having a difficult time or if I'm struggling to find some resource, that they will provide that to me.
And there are a number of things, ways to join the fight and working with Alzheimer's Association. Now, you want to click that? So, number of ways are becoming a volunteer. We don't, an advocate. Let's go ahead and look at volunteer. Whether you can spare a few hours a week or a more significant time commitment, there are a number of ways. A community educator, which is what I'm doing, or joining the local walk planning committee, or walking and actually helping raise funds for this. Let's look at advocacy. It's an organized effort. They're in Washington. You can be sure of that, on behalf of the needs and rights of those facing Alzheimer's disease. Trial match, and very important for a lot of people, because they feel, you know, who knows, they might be in a clinical study where some breakthrough will happen. So here's another website. Thank you for that. And the Walk to End Alzheimer's. We can get our young people involved in this one too. Held annually, more than 600 communities to raise awareness, funds, and benefit Alzheimer's care support and research. And the longest day, it's the day with the most light, the summer solstice, and raising funds and awareness for care, support, and research through an activity of your own choice. Now, this is really interesting, you know, because we all know about the walk, but this is where you figure out your own activity to raise. Do you remember when they were dumping water on each other, whatever that thing was called, that ice bucket? The ice bucket challenge, that probably started out as, you know, one of these types of things. So whatever you come up with. So, any more questions? Thank you so much. You've been a great group. So.